All right, welcome back to the Unsubscribed Tribe. My name is Janet, also known as Rocky's Adventure over on the gram. I'm back with my good friend Ben Lee. Ben, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm enjoying the 30-degree weather here in Toronto. Our restrictions are starting to be lifted starting today. Patios are open, some non-essential stores are open. So I'm thinking all weekend Toronto is going to be one big street festival.
Awesome, awesome. So people are probably getting excited to get back into the gym. We've seen such a disruption in the fitness space with COVID. What have you guys seen in Toronto? I mean, we haven't been in full shutdown. I've been lucky enough to still go to the gym here in BC, but what's going on in Ontario?
So gyms have been closed since November, like completely shut down. No, nothing. Just like some online work. I talked to a few personal training studios who kind of just been skirting around it and opening up the personal training studio, and people kind of sneaking in the back door. And I think probably every single gym is doing some version of that right now, just not really publicizing it. Weirdly enough, as well, the fitness industry, for some reason, seems to consider itself an expert on COVID and infectious diseases. So I see on my Facebook, there's a lot of people I know, who own gyms or, like they work in the fitness industry, and they're posting all this like anti-mask, anti-lockdown, anti-vax rhetoric. Who's that guy? The People's Political Party of Canada or something, the PPPC, Maxime Bernier, I
Oh
believe.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Sounds like he would be sounds like a Karen of the politics, like French Canadian.
Yeah, like there's so many of these guys in the fitness industry here in Toronto and the GTA that are just like loving Maxime because he's saying what they want to hear. And like I get the frustration, like if I owned the gym and I was paying like 10K or 50K a month in rent, like I'd be really pissed off as well. But when you start letting that anger start to cloud your judgment into saying, oh yeah, these masks don't work either, I'm not taking this vaccine, it starts to get really goofy. Like honestly, like the dumbest thing I saw was actually the other day. There's this boxer at my old gym who now owns his own boxing gym. I think it's called Fearless Boxing Gym in like Oakville or something. And this idiot made like a post
No
like
autonomy
saying,
here.
yeah,
Just
no,
call it
no,
out.
no.
Just call it. Just call it out.
You can go Google it for all you like. He made a Facebook post saying, if you've taken this experimental drug that's in the vaccine, I don't want you in my gym.
Mm, hmm.
And it's weird because particularly at this one gym I used to go to, a lot of those people are into the healing crystals and the chakras, and like, oh, you walk barefoot to ground the dirty electricity into the earth, and they're into all that kind of nonsense. And sure enough, when the vaccine rolls around, these are all the anti-vaxxers as well, going like, oh yeah, the vaccine causes magnet. I saw this one video when one of my level-headed friends sent me, and it's a nurse trying to demonstrate how when you take the vaccine, it causes your body to become a magnet and attract metals, and metals start sticking to you. So I don't know. Like I thought Magneto powers were pretty cool, so that makes me want to get my second dose even more now.
Yeah, it's been interesting to see the divide. I have also seen it's funny, I've talked to some people in Vancouver who say that they see everyone from doctors and nurses and lab techs denying the science behind it. However, I've seen the majority, and this could be just based on the people that we follow, right? And who we're surrounded by. But a lot of the people that I follow and respect have come from it like at us, like it's just a scientific, like I feel like there's a definite divide in terms of the yoga teacher training fitness professionals and your I have experience in a lab, I research science, I read scientific papers for fun because I'm in that group. Like we read scientific papers for fun. And so there's just like this different aspect of evidence. However, my friend in Vancouver, and we still see this everywhere, doctors and people that deny the science, but at the same time, like if you want to get upset at the legislation, get upset at the legislation, but do not separate that from the
Yeah.
science. So I completely understand that there were like actions taken by the government that didn't make sense. And I think that that was just the government not understanding the implication of how the laws would roll out and how people would behave in response to these laws, like in terms of worst case scenario, best case scenario. You look at the whole situation with shutting down the essential services, and then all of a sudden they start taping off areas of stores that have non-essential items and then deciding what's essential and non-essential. And I think that was just a case of like going back, a few months ago when they started to do these shutdowns, they did not anticipate how many people would be maybe this is just the human desire to be around people out and doing something, and shopping is a huge activity for people. I mean, for me, I've been meditating, I have been going, like, I've been working out, I've been hiking, I've been able to invest in myself in all these amazing ways, but a lot of people don't have these resources. And so they sit at home and start whining because they don't know what else to do.
Yeah, like if you're just at home all day, got nothing to do, and you start drinking a bit, and that one beer turns into six, that six beers turns into like a bump of cocaine. Next thing you know, it's real slippery slope. So I'm not surprised to be honest. But yeah, like this idea of, and I also get why people are pissed off at the government, because even the government says, oh, like believe the science. I don't even think these guys really understand what the hell they're talking about.
That's the thing,
Um,
and I think that the thing is, we can see like nobody knows what they're talking about. This is a new disease, but the government won't admit to it because they need to try to have some kind of semblance of control. But really, the whole variant thing, they're like everything's out of control.
Yeah, and like the funniest part is, a lot of people, will say like, oh, like do your research, do your research. And it's like, okay, yeah. So like, have you submitted your ethics documents like to like the Office of Research Ethics? Do you have your sample population calculated? What's your statistical power? What kind of post hoc analysis are you doing on your sample population? You
Yeah,
don't have these questions, you're not doing science. So,
yeah.
or not doing research. So just all these guys, they're using those words, science and research, and it's like, I don't think you really know what those words mean.
Yeah, yeah, and it's funny because it's just a situation where people are avoiding the hard truth, the uncomfortable truth. Like, this is the thing, is that they don't want to admit to the fact that when left to their own devices, they are unmotivated and lazy and probably could be investing their time in doing something better. But like, and that's the thing, is that I think that, again, there's a real divide in terms of people. Some people have come out of this really far ahead, and I've been sometimes surprised at some of the people who, I think that there's some people that like I can understand where they're coming from in terms of their struggle, especially parents with kids and stuff. But some of the irony in saying you need to question the government, don't like listen to their lies, take my kids back to school. I think that's like the most ironic thing that you can say. Like, like I'm just like, that's exactly where your kids learn to just do what they're told.
Yeah, and there's no there are better factories for building robots than the public education system. So, I'm sure they're all eager to get back, just to get the kids out of the house and out of their own hair, and then make it someone else's problem. And like that was the thing, was that when like back here, I mean, here in Ontario, we flip back and forth on the school opening thing quite a bit. And some of my own 40s, like personal 40s clients are teachers. And they've just been pulling their hair out this entire situation, because they're like, they don't like, the government doesn't get how difficult it is to transfer from in-person to online and flip-flop constantly. And they're just telling the teachers, oh, just take your current lesson plan and just teach it over Zoom.
Mm.
And it's like, yeah, that is physically impossible, because we're now no longer accounting for all the nuances that come with teaching on Zoom. And man, like even just talking to people, like, like to people who teach like elementary school kids, like what are these kids learning? It's like they spend like half the day just trying to get the kids to unmute themselves. They don't know how to operate Zoom. And then at the other half is like, what are they even learning? I asked one of my other clients who has a 5-year-old daughter, and I was like, what's she learning right now? And he's like, nothing. She's 5.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I have like like a specific opinion on this, A, being homeschooled, and knowing what real homeschooling was like, because the uh educational systems curriculum is not homeschooling. And I think that there has been a significant, like from what I've heard in terms of the amount of homework that kids do, like homeschooling for us was our mom with 3 children. So that is pretty great in terms of a 3-to-1 ratio. When you look at the typical classrooms, which we know have been growing in size,
Like 10
teachers have been
times that.
protesting this. You've got 1 to 30 students, and then you have a lot of homework. And my theory is that that homework has increased to substitute for that one-on-one teaching time. And so right now, you're sending kids home with that same curriculum that is designed for a 30-to-1 ratio when you have actually a 2-to-1 ratio, but your parents have limited time, but the same amount of homework as if your kid was not getting that same specialized time. And so like I just think that this was a really poor execution on the government in terms of taking an education system that was designed for one situation and try and throwing it into something else, and it obviously hasn't worked.
Yeah, like, and I can imagine what families are doing where both parents work.
Hmm.
And now you got, okay, two people who are busy with their own stuff for 8 hours, and they might have, like one or two kids who are now, e-learning. Like, who's actually making sure that they're going to class? Like, if spending time on Instagram has taught me one thing, it's that people have all kinds of crazy solutions around how do you slack off during Zoom classes.
Yeah.
I saw one where this one guy had a little Lego of himself, like right up against the webcam, a little fake background, and it just looks like he's like staring off, but in reality, like he's not even there. He's not like smoking his bong or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like I wonder what's going to happen, especially now that high school's over. You got a fresh crop of grade 12 kids going to university in the fall. They spent their final year in high school like at home, sometimes just fucking the dog, doing nothing. So like, what's going to happen when these kids go to university, or even worse, like how the undergrad kids who just finished this like their final semester, they've been sitting at home learning over Zoom. They get to the workforce and it's like, oh fuck, like
Ew. Oh God. You know what? To that point regarding the kids, I think about, what we've seen regarding depression and anxiety increasing, but at the same time, we've seen a significant uptick in the hours that they've spent online. And that's the non-classroom time. So outside of their school time, a lot of these kids have been spending on average 6 hours a day online. And like, like I know that when I was a kid, like when I was 12, like that was where I actually met people, was online. And I'm talking to kids these days who are making online friends, and there's definitely a healthy aspect to it. But the increase in advertising and misinformation that's out there, I think, is, and just again, the advertising, the whole perfectionist scenario that you see online, I think that's what's really contributing to the depression and the anxiety, because kids are just consuming a lot of this media, which makes them feel not good enough.
yeah, like they say, like the internet is not real life. Even like watching the news is not real life. So if you get all of your information either from the internet or from the news, like you're screwed. Like that's not an accurate representation of reality. It's just some weird fabricated things, and all of a sudden you're making all these comparisons to what you're seeing, and thinking like, oh my god, like my life isn't like this. Must be something wrong with me. And it's not that the source of not that the source of information I'm getting is the one that's wrong.
Yeah, you know what's funny is what just jumped into my head when we talk about the internet and not being real life. Like real life scenarios that I've run into lately. Like yesterday, I went to go pick up my friend's kids from their school, and there was a domestic dispute right
Ooh.
there in the parking lot where the mother parked in front of the father and tried to block him, was yelling about him kidnapping. And so I jump out, because I do in these situations, and because I'm just like, oh, she's gonna get run over or something's gonna happen. Anyways, they tear off like her chasing him. I'm like, listen, if he's kidnapping the kid, call the RCMP, then they'll take care of it. But I was left there with 10 children who had witnessed the entire situation and then asked me what happened. And I'm like, sometimes when a mommy and daddy fight, like, and I actually had a real life scenario that could be traumatizing because this mother was yelling about kidnapping. Like, God knows about the children that are in the vehicle and what happened there. But more and more, I'm actually running into these real life situations, and I'm finding that there's not a lot of, we have this rom-com Disney princess view of reality, especially at the age of 12, kids start to understand more, and we have this group of youth growing up um, with this online world. Sorry about that. And, the reality, which is very different.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see what this is going to do to the physical and mental health of like kids, and like not just now, but even fast forwarding this like longitudinally, like 1, 3, 5, 10 years from now. What if there's going to be any kind of long-term follow-up from the fact that all these kids are spending the entire day online sitting down as well? Because that's like, okay, like the kids in e-learning, he's like at his computer, he might be just dicking around, like watching porn, or I don't know, like on some other websites, and after class is done, to go play some video games, go play some PlayStation or Xbox. So it's pretty much spent your whole day just like sitting in one chair for another, staring at a screen. So the lack of physical activity, a lack of human like physical interaction, I'm sure is going to lead to some kind of really weird cascade that we're going to see like a few years from now.
Yeah, it's interesting. So, like, kind of jumping back to like the adult side of things and how we relate, but also looking at the online space, we've seen this huge surge in the Instagram challenges, like the 75 hard stuff and these plank dances that people do and blah, blah, blah. And it's been interesting to watch that like simultaneously. And I think that you've been kind of going through the same thing. We have been able to dive into more introspection, I think, into our kinesthetic awareness, slow down our movements, and focus more on ourselves. Like, I think that by working out at home, I was able to eliminate distractions and really start to feel my muscles, and even noticing and learning about the science between eye movements. I was there in my parents' gym working with, 10-pound, 15-pound weights, but really focusing on the movement, slowing it down and feeling it. And I've had the best year I've ever had.
Yeah, that's super interesting. So you keep giving me updates as to what's going on, and it just keeps sounding like different neurological compartments are just being unlocked, which is fantastic. The way I look at it sometimes, because I've had similar experiences like with my quad tears, is that I look at it like I would usually tell all my clients that training is like a video game. Like if like you probably never really played any action RPGs, so like God of War or like Assassin's Creed or stuff like
Does
that.
007 count?
No, because
Okay.
there was no, yeah, there was no RPG element to that.
I don't know what
But the
RPG
idea
means.
is in any kind of RPG, your character is, like either fighting some bad guys or doing whatever, and they're earning EXP points. And those EXP points, when you accumulate enough, it levels you up, and you can take those levels and then put them towards increasing certain attributes or learning new skills. But the way I look at it is, for example, if I want to achieve like a level 50 axe throw, for example, I need to first master level 1 overhead shoulder mobility.
Mm-hmm.
So the way I tell people is, especially when you're coming from like a very injured or limited state, you're kind of starting off as this like new character that has zero skills, that's going to get killed by the first enemy that comes around. So you've got to go around completing all these weird menial side tasks so that you can level up, you can improve upon certain skills, and you can only unlock this really awesome skill up the skill tree only when you've mastered the prerequisite skills to that. So it's like if your back hurts and you want to play golf, well, like you aren't going to be able to create like a high velocity twist through the spine until you learn how to actually stabilize your spine in axial rotation. So, it's building upon that. But it's at the other hand, it is really interesting because the whole motor learning aspect of as your brain learns and unlocks certain
Oh,
neural compartments, it's like you have to reteach yourself how to do old things. It's like you might
I've
have
been relearning how
walking.
to walk. Really, that's what's been
Yeah,
happening.
interesting. So like what have you been feeling when comparing, let's say, now to like a year ago when you were walking?
Just you know what, the analysis that we did with Fortius Labs really brought attention to my left shoulder, and like talking what you're like listening to what you're saying about unlocking things like physically. That's what I've been going through. Like the analysis that you guys did showed me a lot of the interconnected issues that I was having, and as part of like the whole body approach, my footwork has been a huge part of it. But going through my feet, unlocking my ankles, going up to my calves, how that is affecting my knee and the joint mobility tracking over my knee. And now, I'm texting you kind of it's been amazing because every day I feel like I'm making insane amounts of progress. And I'm getting closer and closer to having stronger just stronger lifts because I'm biomechanically in a better position. I know that like last year at about this time, or maybe 13 months ago, I was in Ontario. I had just been on bed rest after having a burst cyst on my ovary, still suffering from back pain from the two slip discs. And I had two kids that were about the age of 2 years old that were in my care. And I realized that I was in an unsafe position and that I couldn't pick them up and scoop them up if I needed to. And so that was really, really hard for me to accept because I was still doing lots of like heavy lifts in my upper body and stuff. So I really was, I found so much benefit in doing that Fortius analysis. So do you want to give people a little bit of an overview of how it works?
Yeah, definitely. So with Fortius, it's a completely virtual assessment that's designed to identify limitations and compensations in the way you move that can either lead to an increased risk of injury, be the root cause of an existing pain or injury, or decrease performance, let's say, at work or in a sport or in a physical activity. So the way it works is we have all of our end users go through a very specific movement screen. So we're basically taking them through about 6 different movements that are testing things like upper body coordination, mobility, motor control, things of that nature. But and I mean, this is not a new concept, right? Like physical therapists, personal trainers, all these guys have been assessing human movement and screening movements, for decades. But the big difference is between us and, let's say, some personal trainer is that the trainer is just going to use their eyes to estimate. Oh yeah, I think this guy's squat is just below parallel. I think the one shoulder is a little bit off compared to the other one, kinda. But there's a lot of subjectivity. And the way I look at it is your training program is based on the results of your assessment.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like garbage in equals garbage out. A really shitty assessment is going to lead to a really shitty training program because you're not accurately identifying what actually is going on in that person.
And I
So
mean, beyond the limitations of that personal trainer, I mean, that personal trainer can only focus on one joint at a time. So it's not seeing the biomechanical system and the inefficiencies that could be in the rest of the body. And I mean, I think of what the, alternative is for a lot of people, and that's an MRI. And that's not actually showing you movement. And that I think is the key differentiator between Fortius and what else I've seen on the market.
yeah. Thanks for that. It's like an MRI, assumes that you're lying on your back completely still. And if you ever gotten an MRI, for those listening who've never got one, you're basically just sitting in this tube while the technician tells you not to move for like a half hour. While this grinding sound occurs from the magnets doing their
Oh, it
work.
sounds like you're in a cement mixer.
Yeah, like it's if you're claustrophobic, you're not gonna have a good time in an MRI machine. Like I actually fell asleep in one once, but I can fall asleep anywhere. But yeah, like it's like there's oh man, there's such a big debate in the physical health world about the validity and the usefulness of medical imaging like MRIs because it doesn't collect movements. Like there's a stat up there. I think about over 60% of healthy or non or asymptomatic low backs MRI show major disc bulges. so that, but the person is completely fine. They're out there, they're running, they're working their job, they're lifting their kids, no pain whatsoever. But if you show that MRI to a spine surgeon in the US, they'd be like, oh, this looks terrible, we need to operate right away. And as a result, a lot of people who get low back pain end up worse than they were, because that surge, they've now been cut open, that those spinal erectors are now no longer firing the way they should be because they've had direct trauma being sliced open. You've now gone in there and you've modified this guy's spinal disc that didn't even need to be. It's basically unnecessary surgery. But I mean,
Mhm.
the surgeons are making money, the hospital's making money, insurance companies making money. So,
Pharmaceutical companies are making money,
farm companies making money. So,
and it's
yay,
wow.
capitalism. Yeah,
Yeah,
they're all winning except for the end user, unfortunately.
yeah, and so for those of you that don't understand, or sorry, don't know of my injury history, I was a competitive bobsled athlete. I crashed about 9 times within the course of 4 to 5 months. That's at about 120 kilometers an hour. Those crashes don't stop, so I was severely concussed for years. I also had a number of jobs that contributed to some structural compensations in my musculature. And this led to chronic pain over time, which eventually resulted in two slip discs. I was hit by a skier. And so that chronic twisting of my body ended up popping my discs out in two places. And so that was in my thoracic spine as well as my sacral lumbar spine. And so having a basic understanding of kinesiology, I was at a specialist and I, asserted what I thought was a really logical explanation for why my back had this disc herniation in two places. And he said that wasn't possible. And I immediately was like, I don't think that's correct. Here we are on the Unsubscribe Tribe. Here I am with Ben, and a year later, I am pain free. I am back to lifting and lifting more than I was when I was 21. I'm doing pull ups, deadlifts. My squat range of motion has improved greatly. And no back pain or no back like drugs and no surgery. All natural within a month over quarantine, and that's with access to some really light weights.
Nice. Yeah, like the big thing is, especially when it comes to rehab, is that I mean, eventually you will need load based on what your activities are, but very early on, you don't actually need much weight to actually get an effective workout. And I think that's something a lot of people lack. And I think it's this idea that a lot of people they like it's the fitnessization of working out, I suppose, which is
Mhm.
that a lot of people think, because of the advent of CrossFit and HIIT and boot camps, is that if they're not huffing and puffing and ready, like feeling like they're going to die by the end of the workout and they're not like sore as shit, they feel like they haven't gotten an effective workout. And one of the biggest hurdles for me working with my new clients is trying to educate them on the idea that you should feel better than before you started. Like if you finish my
Yeah,
workouts and you feel
totally.
like you're ready to go run through a brick wall, then mission accomplished.
This has
But
been the
that means,
hardest point to find.
yeah. And it's that, because everyone is so used, like, you look at people who like lift weights, look good, play sports, lose fat,
No pain, no
get
gain. I see
stronger.
chin
It's
drip. Everyone's
all,
excited about how many, how like throwing up. Like people glorify throwing up during a workout.
yeah, like remember when CrossFit had that like rhabdomyolysis clown as their mascot?
No, I don't
And
know. I
it
don't
was
really
like,
follow it that closely.
like I think they changed it, but I remember early in the days their mascot was this like Pukey the clown or something, and
Really?
like what rhabdo is, like rhabdo. I think it's rhabdomyolysis, I believe.
Yeah, okay. Don't know who that
Yeah.
is, but sure.
Okay, so rhabdo is when your muscle starts eating itself, processing itself, and you start pissing blood out.
Ew. Okay.
And it's a huge. You can actually fuck your kidneys up real bad if you get rhabdo, because your kidneys are going to process all that muscle tissue that your body is eating because it has no other fuel source to fuel your activity. And you see it a lot in like ultra endurance athletes, military special operations, and CrossFit was the big one because they're all doing these insane wads, like the workout of the days. Someone who doesn't have the athletic background, they're okay. It's like, all right, let's do 300 burpees. And at the very end, like they're in the hospital because they're running a fever, all the joints are swollen up, they got compartment syndrome and rhabdo. And for a while, that was like the badge of honor in CrossFit.
Man, you know what? It's funny because the thing is that you have these kind of two, like, sport and then the military. And it's, again, like, we use the military as the be all end all, but like that is designed for like survival if you're going to die, and not optimization. It's designed for survival, and it's continued to be used as the standard for like motivation and determination and perseverance. And it creates all these unhealthy outcomes in like the military. And then we use this as it's funny because like today, I gotta stop following the account like You Look Like a Man, because I get on there in the morning and then I see some dude who's making stupid comments, and so then I just go and start chatting with him, and making him look like an idiot. Because it's funny because it's like, you can be a comment warrior and stuff, and I don't want to be that person. But when these guys take the time to be stupid on the internet and show everybody else, I'm gonna continue to tease that out. So this guy was a big fat shamer, and he was talking about going on a hike with a woman who he perceived to be 300 pounds and how she had to stop. He went on to talk about shame being a very effective tool, that he's never worked with a client who hasn't benefited from, I was just outing him like, you don't understand metabolism, you don't understand adrenal burnout, you don't understand the health science, like, you're continuing to show this as you talk, like, stop talking. But like, looking at that situation, what would be from a positive and encouraging side for somebody that maybe in that situation? And it's funny because, like, if you do understand this, if you are injured and you end up taking painkillers, that affects your gut microbiome. You start to have chronic inflammation. You start to accumulate weight because you're not getting the nutrients into the food that you're trying to digest. So this is a cyclical issue. And a lot of the time, you do see people that are overweight that struggle with joint issues when they're getting started. But we have this, no pain, no gain. You need to sweat, you need to try hard. So, what would be some simple, ways to start for somebody who might be in that position where they're continuing to struggle against the inflammation and the joint pain, but they do want to work towards fitness?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. And I think, the answer is always it depends, to quote Stu McGill.
Hmm.
But I would say that the generalized answer would be something is better than nothing. If you're coming from a position where a week ago, for the past, I don't know how many years, you were just on your couch, drinking a beer, eating chips, blah, 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 kind of thing, the best thing you can do is just get up off the couch, even if it just means walking around your house or flailing your limbs around. Because if you're at that stage, any movement is going to be better than nothing. Yeah, and especially if you have existing joint pain, there's especially like among a lot of weightlifters and power lifters, who are big, muscular, but also big fat guys who want to start losing some fat. They start trying to run sprints or start running a 5K, and then they destroy their knees. But it's like when you're that big, like if you're like, 270 pounds, you don't need to run. Like, and especially if you have a very poor cardio base, like
Hmm.
you could probably get to like 60% max heart rate just through like taking a brisk walk. And that's probably the best place to start. I think walking is probably one of the most underrated exercises anyone can do. It's great if you're working an office job. It's great if you're a senior citizen. It's great if you have balance issues. I mean, like if you're like, like a competitive, if you're in the UFC or something, okay, you're going to need something a lot more robust, or even let's say like you're like a well-trained amateur athlete or like rec league athletes. But that being said, like there's nothing wrong with walking. Like promotes natural cadence, like promotes rhythm, hip extension, using the glutes and the core musculature to create reactive stability of the trunk. You're getting in like a very effective cardio, like aerobic capacity building activity as well. But one of like the magic ingredients, and I think this is something I actually saw recently on Instagram and Facebook. It was Eric Cressy, the strength and conditioning coach, who I've been reading since like the 2016 Nation days, he put it really well. It's that everyone, exercise solution is probably one of the best acute modifications you can make. And it's that everyone seems to really like to argue the semantics or like the finer details of like, oh, 4x6 is better than 6x4, or you should be resting 126.25 seconds in between sets to maximize like muscle creatine reuptake or whatever bullshit like that. Everyone's arguing all these like little minutia that doesn't really matter. But I think the
They're in
biggest
my
question to
DMs.
answer is,
This was Chad. This
sorry?
was a guy named Chad who would literally message me every day looking for this magic number in relation to his workout or the reps or something. And I was just like, consistency, man.
Yeah, it's
Consistency.
like be consistent. It's like doing like a 5x5 versus 6x4 versus 10x3. You're not going to get worse. Like let's put it that way. You're not going to get weaker if you're already
Mhm.
lifting weights, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to get fatter if you're already doing cardio and watching nutrition. So that I think the most important question to answer is, does this exercise hurt or not?
Yeah. And
There you
so,
go.
yeah. So like I just from a practical perspective, because this is what I always like to kind of look at is how do people, take this advice, but implement it. There's often times that we are challenged in implementing these habits and we don't consider some of the factors. So if somebody is perhaps, feeling joint pain with walking, I would say look into biking. And that's something where you can start to reduce your weight, which is going to then reduce the stress in your joints. However, that being said, I do prefer walking and hiking to biking because of that hip stability. But both exercises are great, especially if they're done outdoors. You're going to have that natural anxiety reducing effect, fresh air. There's all these things that are going to contribute to a better sleep. And that's going to, also build towards your results. The other thing I would look at too is getting good footwear. And I say this because I spent an hour or something at Sport Check the other day and I couldn't find shoes that didn't have a 1 inch heel on them. I'm looking for something that's going to be as close to natural as possible. But when you're considering, getting yourself outside, what are some things that you're going to need to do that? I take a little backpack with me. I've got some water. Make sure that you've got your sunscreen. You really want to set yourself up for success and work on the consistency. So don't think that out of the gate, you're going to go for an hour walk every single time. If you can commit to 15 minutes and check off that 15 minutes, that is perfect. The other thing I have loved for my walks, and this is what has completely changed it for me, is podcasts. I now listen to podcasts and walk instead of watching television. You can listen to fiction, nonfiction. I prefer educational. There's comedy. But guys, like, there's no reason to sit on the TV and continue to, destroy your health. You can go outside and work on your health while still getting a form of entertainment. And like for me, that's just a way better way to spend my time.
Yeah, just throw on your favorite podcast, put your headphones in, and you're off to the races. I know some people were doing at the gym beforehand, just take it outside and there you go. But yeah, like I think that's the thing is that like, a lot of people think that, oh, in order for me to exercise, I need to have like my protein powder and my water bottles and my exercise equipment and all this fancy stuff. And they start to build it up in their brains, thinking that, oh, this is like a really big task I can't accomplish. I'm just gonna quit while I'm ahead.
Totally. Yeah.
But like that's the whole thing is like one reason exercise is great is because like, anyone can do it as long as you have a physical body that I mean is not subject to like as long as you're not crippled and like bedridden. You can get around just walking up and down your stairs, just like standing. For older adults who have poor balance. One of the classical tests they do is what they call like a time to get up and go as well as sit to
Mm-hmm.
stand.
Mm-hmm.
We're just looking at like how long does it take you to stand up, walk around the room, and come back down. Can you do it? But if you have difficulty with like just with this like standing, well, just like standing up out of your chair like you're doing a squat is probably one of the best things you could do because again, you're at least doing something. Something is always better than nothing.
Yeah, and that is actually a marker. If you're at the point where you're struggling to get up off your chair or off the ground, that is the biggest marker for actually early death, because that is representative of you just not being able to have that motor control, and it continues to cascade. So unfortunately, this means being real with yourself. Again, going back to that thing we see on Instagram, a life of perfection. But in order for us to really get ahead, we need to address the truth. And that's what the Fortius software really helped me. It showed me where I was weak.
Yeah, like this has been the comment from a lot of our users, is that it gave them insight that they never really understood before or never even noticed. That, some guys tell me that they're actually a bit cocky going into the assessment, thinking, oh, this is not going to tell me anything. I'm already doing really well. And then they're like, holy shit, I didn't realize I look like that when I'm doing an overhead squat.
Yeah.
And it starts to open eyes. Because I think, if your trainer were just to tell you, oh yeah, you don't look too good when you squat, you're kind of like, yeah, fuck you, buddy. Like, what do you know? But when you actually have like a piece of software that's telling you, okay, your left hip has really limited mobility, and here's the data why. It's like, okay, this is no longer bullshit. This is actually measuring what I do. This is universally validated AI technology that is accurately telling me, here's what's wrong with me, or here's what my issues are. But it also tells me, here's what you can do to improve upon it. And I think that's the missing ingredient. And I'm going to actually rant for a little bit, because there's a bit of like, I don't know if the term is cognitive dissonance or whatnot.
Cognitive dissonance. Yeah.
Yeah. Within certain strength sports, like powerlifting, because like the powerlifters seem to have a problem with like quote unquote corrective exercise, saying that all the planks and dead bugs in the world are not going to actually help you squat better. I would disagree with that, because I've seen firsthand a lot of people who've increased their squat maxes just by training their cores.
That biomechanically doesn't make sense though, because of where, like, it depends, like, where's your squat load going? If your squat load's going on your shoulders, biomechanically, your core needs to support that load.
Yeah, it's like, if I were to show you in your assessment that you have a bit of for example, like a lateral asymmetry in your trunk when you're
doing exactly
what
I had
movements, you're going to need to stabilize that. What's going to help you out there? Well, side bridge is probably one of the best places to start. So, but then you get some power lifter, who's used to squatting 600 pounds. He's going to be like, oh, it's just using my body. It's not going to help me get stronger. Well, this is another reason.
Before he throws his belt on, he says, core. He's like, core strength doesn't help, and then he throws a belt on.
Yeah, puts his belt on and goes on Facebook later to complain about his back killing him and him eating a bunch of Advils before he goes to bed.
Yeah.
So there's like and then I think one of the things is that we talk about this idea of like lack of education. I think this is it right here. It's that these guys don't understand like the neuromechanics and the biomechanics of what exactly is going on there. Mm-hmm. And it's like, and I've seen firsthand. And I'll give you like a case study as well, with one of my clients. So he's a military dude, young guy, very like I guess like athletic, slender build. So this guy, like he's an endurance guy. He can go for days. Through his entire life, he's been a very avid hiker, runner, ice climbing. Anything to do with outdoor physical activity. That's all him. But his issue was he needed to get way stronger to make it in for some military like special forces selection testing. So his trainer had, started integrating squats, deadlifts, lunges, very classical, just general strength stuff, which is fine. But the problem was, from that, he developed some massive shin splints and knee pain, which is actually about to disqualify him for going through special ops selection, which was to him like a dagger through the heart.
Yeah.
So I got a hold of him. We ran his assessment. What we found was his feet were wildly unstable. You watch him do a single leg balance. The minute he's on one foot, you can see that foot get all over the place. The ankle, like change in velocity, is just going nuts on the graph.
Yeah.
Even things like overhead squatting, dynamic lunging, even just like standing, you can see that as his feet are going all over the place. So the first thing we did with him was two things. We started to roll his feet out, just using a lacrosse, or sorry, three things rather. We started to roll his feet out, get some soft tissue work for the bottom for his foot arches. We started implementing a lot of big toe mobility exercises and big toe control exercises, because that big toe is so important as a,
Mm-hmm.
not just for mechanical stability to create propulsion off the ground, but also for biofeedback and sensory input into the ground so you actually feel what you're walking on. The third thing we did with him was a lot of foot stability work. Lo and behold, 2 weeks later, he comes back to me. He's like, I don't know how you did it, but my knee pain is completely gone. We spent 6 months seeing physios and chiros and doctors. And I was just about ready to just quit, to quit my dream of trying to be an operator, like a special operations soldier, and just keep my office job. But he's like, yeah, now we can train. And lo and behold, he freaking smashed that test. So this is like a great example of we had to peel back the layers of the onion to figure out what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And now translating it back to my other powerlifting example, a lot of powerlifters will think the only way for me to get stronger is to go, run a West Side program or 5x5 program, going back to the idea of arguing the majoring in the minors, so to speak. But if you peel back the layers, you might actually figure out that, hey, the reason my bench press isn't increasing is because my upper back is not as stable as it should be.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of the analogy of, if I told you you could get stronger, fitter, leaner, blah, 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 but you didn't have to lift more weights and put yourself at greater risk of injury, would you do it? And it's like, hell yeah, like, of course I would. Like, if you're telling me that, I could be a better martial artist, a better weightlifter, just and without actually having to go get a set of new PR in my, or for, no, that's a bit of a weird example for powerlifting. But let's say, if I wanted to be a powerlifter, I want to add 50 pounds to my squat. And the modality to do so doesn't involve me risking blowing my back out each workout because I'm handling these max weights every workout. And I can do it just through improving neuromuscular control. Then, it's like, okay, like now we're talking, this is like a sustainable long-term solution of how I continue to gain strength without actually wearing my body away. And,
Yeah.
and one last little thing is, like, there's a really great analogy. It was actually taught to me by Stu McGill, who apparently got it from one of his grad students, Greg Lehman, who's now, very much in like the pain science world. He actually has a clinic out in Scarborough here in Ontario. But the analogy is, every time you add load to your body, it's like you're adding water into your cup. But if I add too much water at once and it's too quickly, the cup's eventually going to overflow. And when that happens, when a cup overflows, that is when pain or injury occurs.
Mm-hmm.
So to remedy that, there's three solutions I have. Number one, I can add less water to my cup, which just means reducing my activity. I could try, but the second option is to find ways to drain my cup, to actually empty water out of my cup, which might be through things like meditation, better sleep, recovery techniques like Epsom salt baths, or using the sauna, classic Rhonda Patrick kind of stuff. The third option is that I can actually try to increase the size of my cup. And this is the beauty of the human body, because it's adaptable to the demands you put it to. Classical, you adapt to the specific demands applied to your body. So that through carefully selected exercises where I'm not just crushing my joints every workout, but I'm improving that neuromuscular integration, I can actually use that to increase the capacity of my cup, so that the old volume of water that used to cause my cup to overflow now only brings it up to about halfway or so.
Yeah, it's funny because you talk about decreasing the load, and that was another thing about COVID, which I think had an influence, is because there was no one watching me work out. And so I wasn't concerned about lifting heavy weights to impress other people. And so I stuck to low weights and just worked on the form and the recruitment of muscles. And you know what? I'm right now I'm sorry, I'm not great. I'm not well organized, but I'm trying to find my results, because I think it's so awesome to see the visual, especially the change of velocity. Talking about that gentleman, that client you have from the training, the special forces, and the situation that he had with his feet, that was one of the key issues that led to a chronic misalignment in my hips. And one of the situations was I broke my toe when I was 12. I started leading on my right hip. So throughout this process, I've been rolling out my feet, and I'm actually expecting my toe to actually change alignment at some some point, because I've been able to increase the mobility in my calves. Right now, I'm getting a lot of neural activity in there as they start to come online. That has, as well been, I've been working on my hips. Like all of this, chronic tightness has led to other compensations. And so by the act of leaning on my right hip, there's areas of my quad that have been chronically tight. And that's because the psoas being inactive. And so there's different ways that the body has compensated, and has been me being able to feel. No one's been working with me, like aside from you and giving you reports, but every time I go into the gym, like you said, I work on feeling better. I want to come out feeling better. And I really just sit in my body to feel what is tight. And I am analyzing every movement to see where my limitations are. And so that could involve doing like 10 minutes of ball work on my quadricep to open it up, and then jumping into a squat to test out that range of motion. And that was what I was doing the other night when I texted you and I said, man, this is going so well. I have had a butt wink for like 5 years, is like the first time I noticed it, and it's finally disappearing. I'm getting some incredible range of motion in my ankles and in my calves, and my hips are finally able to sink into the bottom of the squat like they are supposed to. I've got a nice strong core. Going back to what you said about that big toe, in the ski season, I started to actually feel full drive in my skis all the way through my core. And now in the gym, I've got those big toes activated, when I'm holding onto those arches, and I'm driving that core strength when I'm in goblet squats and when I'm in kettlebell swings. Oh, hair.
Yeah, I get it. I did the exact same thing as you, but in 2015. Like I was living in Kitchener. I moved into a new house in Kitchener, and it has this stone staircase, like 3 stone steps going up to the front door. And I remember tripping over the top step, and I was carrying like a glass TV stand. So to save the stand, I ended up actually rolling over top of my toe, and it popped
God.
with all my weight on it. And I was kind of like, oh, that sucked. And I was like, oh well. And I just kind of went on about my day. And my big toe actually like yeah, goes inwards, kind of like that, um, and like it doesn't straighten out. And I always wondered like why is my balance on my left foot so shitty? And like I'm like 99.99% convinced that me tearing my left quad was a direct result of breaking my big toe. And you talk to any clinician worth their weight in gold or whatever you call it, um, they'll tell you the big toe is probably the most important thing for human locomotion. I think this is what separates us from a lot of the other animals, is the fact that we have these big, strong, big toes, which is supposed to be gripping into the ground. Like that sensory input is so important. And then when that's broken, it's kind of the equivalent of like driving around on flat tires. And then you wonder, why did you do so poorly in this drag race at like the drag strip with like when you're driving on the rims? And it's like, yeah, well, no shit. It's like, it's not that your car needs more horsepower, you need better aerodynamics. You just need new tires. You need to just like fix your tires.
Yeah.
And it brings it to another concept, like I'm really just nerding everything up here. But you touched on this earlier, and this idea that, as your toe improved and you felt the hip get better, and that has direct effect into the spine. In the world of mechanical engineering, we call that a kinetic linkage. And that basically means that motion at one joint is directly linked to motion at a joint way further down the chain. And if you ever see like those big excavators, like the ones that scoop the dirt out of the ground,
yeah.
If you ever look at one of those, there's actually a whole series of pin joints that allow for multiple degrees of freedom, so that it's not just going up and down. It allows it to like go up and rotate in certain directions. And I forget how many actual joints on there. I think it varies depending on the make you have, but it's like, if the end bucket is not able to reach like a certain like distance or a certain target, it's probably because like a motion at one of the other joints is not in the right position for that end bucket to reach its objective task. So kind of like going back to the Fortis assessment, the whole idea is that the end user like is given just a bunch of objective tasks to complete. Like, take this dowel, hold it overhead and pull it down behind your neck and bring it back up. Or like hold your dowel, do a squat while it's overhead. I'm just giving you these tasks, but the AI is looking at what's the strategy your body takes to achieve that. And are there any kind of like limitation and compensations, like in your mobility? Is one side, is there an asymmetry between a function of one side or the other? Are there any kind of weird control or coordination issues going on that's causing you to, to look like you're having a seizure as you're trying to complete this objective task? So that's like how we differ a lot, is that even a lot of classical movement screens, like the FMS, functional movement screen, it's giving you a very generalized answer as to what your issues are, and it makes it very difficult then to actually formulate a training program based on that. But with us, we can actually tell you specifically that, hey, your left shoulder is missing 20 degrees of abduction range of motion at the top, or when you do your downward pull down, you're taking an elbow dominant approach, and your peak elbow angular velocity is twice that of your shoulder. And based on knowing that, we can now craft a much more specific and customized training plan that's going to help you hit your goals, but also be cognizant of here's what we should be avoiding, and here's some stuff we should be doing in your warm-up that's going to help improve upon the limitations so that you have better mechanical efficiency to complete whatever activity or goal that you're into.
Yeah. What's been surprising for me is the neural overload and how it's been taxing my central nervous system as my body relearns this motor unit recruitment. I'm just continuing to grow, but I'm finding like I really need to be mindful of, like, sometimes I'm shaking. And I haven't been lifting that much weight, but my body's been really working hard.
That was literally me yesterday at my Kairos clinic. Shout out to Dr. Don at Brampton Muay Thai and Trinity Collective. This guy, holy shit, like we've working together since I think about early February, if I'm not mistaken, once every 2 weeks. And man, like the changes in my own performance are just night and day. And it's like that my Muay Thai is getting a lot more stable. I'm not as loosey goosey. I'm not so upper body dominant anymore. And it's not that I've just been hitting the bag more. It's that I've been doing these corrective drills that are now enhancing my body's capacity to do these complex rotation-based movements. But yeah, like I remember driving home from our therapy session, which is basically a glorified personal training session, because he just taken me through a whole whack of exercises. I remember driving home and like my right hand was shaking, and I was like, I didn't even use this hand, or I know I used it to post against the wall, and that's when I realized how weak my right arm pressing is because of that rotator cuff and triceps tear on that same side, my lack of internal rotation. But yeah, like everything is neural. Like that's the thing, is that people just seem to, because the muscles are what's visual, that's what people just think is what's driving it. But there's a really good saying in the neuroscience world, which is that the muscles are slaves to the brain. And it's ultimately this, like that motor cortex and other parts of the central nervous system that are what mitigates the ability to create this muscular motion. And in my case, for example, let's say we'll take my quad tear. So when I tore my quad twice in 2017, and I was back to working out by about like the fall of 2017. And I remember being at a gym and I was thinking to myself, okay, my quad needs work. Let's do some backward sled drags. So I was doing them, and I was like, my right quad is so pumped right now and it's so sore, but my left one isn't doing anything at all. And it's just that I didn't have any neural drive. So the answer to my solution to my problem was not to just like train my quads more. It was to do these very specific exercises that actually teach my quad how to turn on again, very, very similar to what you're doing. Now that the quad is more active, I now have the prerequisites to go revisit the backward sled drag and get a much more effective workout out of it, because my body is just firing and coordinating much better than it used to.
Yeah. You know what? One of the big things for me recently has been breathing, and I'm sure we could probably drop into a whole episode of that because you've worked on that. But recognizing that you have time constraints here, if people do want to watch you do Muay Thai in your basement, where can they find you?
You can go check out my personal Instagram. It's at BCYLEE, or Bravo Charlie Yellow. Sorry, Bravo Charlie Yellow Lima Echo Echo.
Yeah.
BCYLEE.
Cool. And for Fortius Labs, where do they find you guys?
Fortius Labs right there. Fortius Labs. It's FORTIUS LABS, all one word. We're on Instagram. Website's currently going under a revamp. Once that's up and running, I'll be sure to give you guys a link.
Awesome. And as usual, I'm over on Rocky's Adventure on the gram. This is the Unsubscribe Tribe. If you don't like what we have to say, go ahead and smash that unsubscribe button because we don't care. We're here to talk about evidence based research ideas and challenge the norm. So thanks again, Ben, for being with me today. See you guys next time.